My daughter was standing outside her school in the pouring rain for 45 minutes, soaked to the bone, shivering, while the woman who was supposed to pick her up sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away, sipping a latte and laughing with her friends. When I found out what really happened that day, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled, because I already knew exactly how I was going to make her regret it for the rest of her life. Before I tell you how this story ends, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight. I read every single one of them, and honestly, knowing you're out there keeps me going on nights when I still think about how close I came to losing everything that mattered to me. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Lucy. I'm 43 years old, and until 2 years ago, I thought I understood what family meant. I was married for 11 years to a man I'll just call my ex-husband, because frankly, he doesn't deserve more space in this story than that. We had one daughter together, Ivy, the brightest, sweetest 9-year-old you'd ever meet. When our marriage ended, it wasn't dramatic. It just quietly fell apart the way some things do, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to hold on to. We agreed to share custody. I got Ivy during the week, he got her on weekends. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and Ivy had just better than either of us expected. Then, about a year after the divorce, my ex-husband started seeing someone new. Her name was Patricia. She was polished, always dressed like she was heading to a business meeting even on a Tuesday afternoon, and she had this way of talking to me that made me feel like I was an inconvenience she had to tolerate. I told myself it didn't matter. Ivy needed stability, and if her father was happy, I could learn to live with Patricia being part of the picture. I was wrong. So wrong. At first, the signs were small. Patricia would show up 10 minutes late to pick up Ivy from her weekend visits. She'd forget to pack her inhaler even though I reminded her every single time. She'd let Ivy stay up far too late on school nights and send her back to me exhausted and cranky. I brought these things up gently, hoping we could find a rhythm that worked. Patricia always had an excuse. Traffic. A work call. She was still learning the routine. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I wanted to believe that my daughter was safe, that the adults around her, even the ones I didn't choose, had her best interests at heart. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Thursday in early autumn, one of those days where the sky had been gray since morning and everyone at work kept glancing out the window, waiting for the storm that the weather app promised was coming. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed. It was Ivy's school. My stomach dropped the way it always does when you see that caller ID, because no parent ever wants that call in the middle of the day. It was the school secretary. She told me that Ivy was still waiting outside, that the after-school pickup line had cleared out almost an hour ago, and that no one had come for her. I asked why they hadn't called sooner. She said they tried the emergency contact first, which was Patricia, since it happened to be my ex-husband's week. Patricia had answered, told them she was on her way, and then never showed up. I left work so fast I don't even remember walking to my car. The rain had started by the time I got there, and I mean really started, the kind of downpour that soaks through your clothes in seconds. And there was my daughter, my 9-year-old girl, standing under the small overhang by the school side entrance because the office had already closed and locked its doors for a staff meeting. She was hugging her backpack to her chest, trying to keep her homework dry, her hair plastered to her face, her lips turning a little blue from the cold. When she saw my car pull up, she didn't run toward it crying. She just stood there for a second, like she wasn't sure it was really me, like she'd stopped expecting anyone to come. That image is burned into my mind. I don't think I'll ever forget it. I got her inside, wrapped her in the emergency blanket I kept in my trunk, and cranked the heat as high as it would go. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. Through chattering teeth, she told me that Patricia had texted her saying she'd be a little late and to just wait by the flagpole. Ivy waited. And waited. She said other kids had already been picked up, that a teacher had walked by once and asked if she was okay, and she'd said yes, because she didn't want to be any trouble. My 9-year-old daughter sat in the freezing rain for 45 minutes, telling herself she didn't want to be a bother, while the adult responsible for her safety was nowhere to be found. I called Patricia the second I got Ivy settled. She picked up on the fourth ring, and I could hear background noise, laughter, the clink of cups, the unmistakable hum of a busy cafe. I asked her where she was. She said, almost casually, that she'd gotten caught up with a friend and lost track of time, but that she was sure Ivy was fine because kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. I have never in my life had to work so hard to keep my voice steady on a phone call. I didn't yell at her. I didn't even argue. I just said, we'll talk about this later, and hung up, because my priority in that moment was my daughter, not proving a point to a woman who clearly didn't understand what she'd done. But something shifted in me that night. Something that had been dormant, some protective instinct I didn't know I still had access to, woke all the way up. I sat by Ivy's bed that evening after she finally stopped shivering, after I'd made her soup and watched her drift off to sleep with a fever creeping in, and I made myself a quiet promise. I was not going to let this slide. Not this time. The next morning, Ivy woke up with a fever of 101 and a cough that worried me enough to keep her home from school. I called my ex-husband, calmly explained what had happened, and asked that Patricia not be alone with Ivy for pickups going forward. He was defensive almost immediately, telling me I was overreacting, that Patricia had apologized and it wouldn't happen again. I realized then that he wasn't going to protect our daughter from this. If anything was going to change, I would have to be the one to change it. So I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed that Patricia's excuses never quite added up. She claimed to be a marketing consultant with a demanding client list, but her schedule seemed suspiciously flexible whenever it suited her, and suspiciously packed whenever Ivy needed her. I started asking Ivy gentle, careful questions, not to interrogate her, but just to understand her world a little better. Ivy mentioned, almost in passing, that Patricia sometimes took her along to meet her other friend, a man Ivy had only seen a handful of times, always at a hotel restaurant, always with Patricia telling Ivy not to mention it to her father because it was grown-up stuff and would just cause confusion. That was the thread. I pulled it. I want to be clear about something before I go further, because I know some of you are already ahead of me. I didn't hire a private investigator or do anything dramatic like you see in movies. I did what any parent would do when their instincts are screaming at them. I paid attention to the small inconsistencies, and I kept a careful record of dates, times, and conversations, because I've learned that patterns tell you more than any single incident ever will. Over the next several weeks, I documented everything. The pickup times. The excuses. The days Ivy came home saying Patricia had taken her along to meet someone and made her wait in the hotel lobby with her tablet while the two of them talked upstairs. I also started noticing something else, something that had nothing to do with childcare and everything to do with why Patricia's schedule was so unpredictable. She was living a double life, and my daughter had been an unwitting cover for it the entire time. It turned out Patricia was still legally married. Not separated, not in the middle of a messy divorce like she'd told my ex-husband. Married. To a man who had no idea she was involved with someone else, let alone that she was bringing a 9-year-old along as an alibi for her secret meetings. The friend Ivy had mentioned wasn't a business associate at all. He was someone Patricia had been seeing on the side for over a year, someone who believed she was single, someone she'd been juggling right alongside my ex-husband, all while using my daughter's presence to make her outings look innocent to anyone who might ask questions. I found out the truth almost by accident. Ivy, in her sweet, guileless way, mentioned that Patricia's other husband had once picked them up from the hotel because Patricia's car wouldn't start. A 9-year-old's memory for detail is a strange and wonderful thing. She remembered his name, remembered that he called Patricia by a different nickname, remembered that he'd asked who Ivy was and Patricia told him she was a neighbor's kid she was babysitting. My daughter had been used as a prop in another woman's affair, and worse, she'd been left to sit in the rain because babysitting a lie had become more important than keeping a child safe. I sat with that information for a few days. I won't lie to you, my first instinct was rage, the kind that makes you want to burn everything down immediately. But I've lived long enough to know that reacting in anger rarely gets you the outcome you actually want. I wanted my daughter protected. I wanted the truth out in the open, where it couldn't hurt anyone else's child the way it had hurt mine. And I wanted Patricia to understand, in a way she couldn't dismiss or excuse away, that there are consequences for treating a child's safety as an afterthought. So I built my case carefully. I wrote down everything Ivy had told me, with dates. I found the hotel where these meetings had taken place and, through a mutual acquaintance, confirmed that yes, a woman matching Patricia's description had been a regular there for over a year, often with a man who was not my ex-husband. I even found, through public records that anyone can access, confirmation of Patricia's still active marriage to a man living 2 towns over, a marriage she had conveniently left out of every conversation with my ex-husband and his family. I didn't do any of this to be cruel. I want to be honest with you about that. I did it because I needed proof, real, undeniable proof, before I brought this to my ex-husband, because I knew Patricia would deny everything and twist it around to make me look like the jealous ex-wife trying to sabotage her relationship. I wasn't going to give her that opportunity. When I finally sat down with my ex-husband and laid it all out, calmly, with dates, with the details Ivy had shared, with the confirmation of Patricia's existing marriage, I watched the color drain from his face. He didn't want to believe it at first. Nobody does. But the pieces fit together too cleanly to deny, and when he confronted Patricia himself, she didn't even bother denying the affair. She tried to justify it, told him it wasn't what it looked like, that her marriage was basically over anyway, the same tired excuses people always reach for when they're caught. What she couldn't explain away, though, was why she'd used a 9-year-old as cover for a year of secret meetings, and why she'd left that same child standing in freezing rain because keeping her secret intact mattered more to her than keeping a promise to a child. I didn't need to expose her on some big public stage for the truth to matter. I brought it to the people who needed to know, my ex-husband, and through him, eventually, her actual husband learned the truth as well, from his own inquiries once suspicions were raised. Patricia's carefully built double life collapsed under its own weight, the way lies eventually do when enough light gets shined on them. My ex-husband ended the relationship immediately. Her husband filed for divorce not long after. And Patricia, who had once looked at me like I was beneath her concern, found herself with nothing left to hide behind. I won't pretend I felt triumphant when it all came out. Mostly, I just felt relieved. Relieved that Ivy would never again be left standing in the rain because an adult decided her comfort and safety were negotiable. Relieved that the truth had come out through patience and evidence rather than through some ugly public scene that would have made things harder for my daughter. Relieved that I had trusted my instincts instead of talking myself out of them the way I almost did in the beginning. The weeks after were hard in their own way. My ex-husband and I had to rebuild some trust between us, because he needed to understand that protecting Ivy came before any adult's comfort or convenience, including his own. To his credit, once he saw the full picture, he became fiercely protective in a way I hadn't seen from him in years. He apologized to Ivy, in his own clumsy way, for not listening sooner. He apologized to me too, for dismissing my concerns as overreacting when really, I'd been trying to tell him something important the whole time. Ivy, for her part, bounced back faster than I expected, the way kids often do when they finally feel safe again. We started a new little ritual after school pickups, where no matter who came for her, she'd get a warm drink waiting for her the moment she got in the car, hot chocolate in the fall and winter, lemonade in the spring, just a small, silly thing that became our way of saying, "You will never be forgotten again." She still brings it up sometimes, not with sadness, but almost like a badge of honor. Remember when I waited in the rain and then everyone found out Patricia was lying about everything? She'll say, like it's a story about a superhero movie rather than something that happened to her. I think that's the part of this whole experience that surprised me most. Ivy didn't come out of it scared or bitter. She came out of it understanding, in her own 9-year-old way, that when something feels wrong, you're allowed to say so, and that the people who love you will move heaven and earth to make it right. I've tried to carry that lesson forward in how I parent her now. I listen harder. I ask more questions. I don't assume that because an adult says something is fine, it actually is. As for Patricia, I heard through mutual circles that she moved out of state not long after everything fell apart, started over somewhere new, away from the mess she'd made. I don't wish her cruelty. I'm not interested in revenge for revenge's sake, and if you've stuck with me this long, I hope you understand that everything I did was in service of protecting my daughter, not tearing someone else down for sport. But I won't pretend I don't feel a quiet sense of justice knowing that the truth caught up with her, the same truth she tried so hard to keep buried under excuses and secret meetings and a little girl's silence. If there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this. Trust your gut when something feels off about how your child is being treated, even by someone your co-parent trusts, even by someone who seems polished and put together on the surface. Children don't always have the words to tell you when something is wrong, but if you pay attention to the small things, the inconsistencies, the little details they mention almost by accident, you'll usually find the truth is right there waiting to be noticed. I almost talked myself out of pursuing this. I almost decided I was being paranoid, that I should just let it go and keep the peace. I'm so grateful I didn't. My daughter is safe now. She laughs easily again. She still gets a warm drink every single day after school, rain or shine, and I plan on keeping that little tradition going for as long as she'll let me. If this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever had to trust your instincts to protect someone you love, I want to hear that story too. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more, because there are so many more stories like this one still to come, and I'd genuinely love to have you along for the next one. Thank you for listening. Take care of your kids, take care of each other, and I'll see you in the next story.